So I learned a bunch of stuff yesterday. I'm just right here now talking about it. But I learned that the supreme leader of Iran was murdered by the United States. He was bombed by the U.S. His name was, I'm going to butcher his name, Ali Khamenei is deceased. But apparently, along with that, were also a bunch of school children, Iranian school children. No matter what you think, this is evil, right? The United States is just doing this on behalf of Israel, and no matter what people might have thought of the supreme leader of Iran, I know Iran was really struggling with democracy. President Trump does not respect American citizens or Americans' First Amendment rights to protest, any more so than apparently the leader of Iran did. Right? This is not about morality. This is not about regime change that benefits Iranian people. This is about a punishment on the United States on behalf of Israel. That's all this is. Similar to what happened with Venezuela. Doesn't matter what you think of Maduro. It wasn't about Maduro. It was about power. It's about the United States rich elite, white rich elite, gaining access to the oil and other resources unprecedentedly of Venezuela. And that number, the number of innocent people that was, I think it was mostly children, school children, Iranian school children that were murdered by the United States and the United States and Israel joint effort. Yesterday was 85. The death toll has gone up to about 153, most of whom were school children. Most of them were girls. Again, the information is trickling down. So, yeah, that is the United States government's fault, and so is Israel. Again, none of this is moral and ethical. It's not about protecting the Iranian people. This is about protecting the evil that is Israel. And the United States, under the Trump regime, is just complicit. It's just compliant. And look, the Trump regime has both unintentionally, foolishly, with their nonsensical tariffs, even geared towards our economic allies like the European Union, and both intentionally have made the cost of living crisis in the United States and affected other markets around the world negatively by making things even more expensive, and prices staying up because once the rich elite class knows that the poor folks are willing to, or unwilling, they have to pay those prices. Those prices are more than likely are going to stay there for a very, very long time, and on necessities and on things that are just recreation, right? Things that we don't necessarily need, right? But I bring all that up because there's a possibility that the prices of things are going to go even further up, not just because the United States and Israel are doing an unholy, unjust war on Iran and several other Middle Eastern countries, right? But just in the fact that Iran can retaliate against the evils of Israel and the United States by blocking off the Strait of Hormuz, which basically connects many Middle Eastern Gulf state countries, all the way through these other passages to the Arabian Sea and the Indian Ocean, right? There's other means in which, like Saudi Arabia, we'll talk about them in a minute, can go through, the Red Sea and things like that. But for Iran and several other countries, really the best way of doing trade and getting things in and getting things out would be through the Strait of Hormuz that connects to the Persian or Arabian Gulf. By blocking that off, that can fuck with the United States. And again, that's going to negatively impact things where prices of things around the world in several countries, including right back in the pockets of United States citizens, could go up even further and stay up. There's already a cost of living crisis. This could fundamentally make it even worse. So yeah, just a little bit of a visual. This is the Strait of Hormuz. We'll just scale out. This is just traditional Google Maps. Obviously, I'm a civilian, so don't have anything more detailed than this, really. Gross, 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 gross. Evil, evil, evil. Evil as well, the kafala system. Evil, evil. As a person of African descent, we're definitely going to be talking about these places in a minute. But this gives you, and yeah, including Yemen. Yeah, this basically kind of gives you a general idea. And your boy Iran. So we're going to start with the bad before we get to the exact silver lining. The bad is the most obvious that we've already touched on. This puts Iranian women and children, innocent Iranian civilians and people in danger because of Israel and America's bullshit. This puts more Palestinians in danger as they are being occupied and further terrorized and colonized by Israel, only because Israel is able to get U.S. payer tax money first and foremost. It puts however number there even is of this innocent Israeli people in danger. It puts so many innocent lives in the Middle Eastern region in fucking direct, explosive, murderous danger because of the bullshit of the state of Israel and the United States. And that includes, but especially Afro-Middle Eastern people. Now, I've talked about this. I've talked about that subject before on this channel. I could have talked about this more in depth 6 years ago, and especially more in depth 4 years ago when I revisited the topic. But as you guys know, I've talked about it before, but the descendants of the Arab slave trade and the Indian Ocean slave trade, right? There are Afro-Iranians, there are Afro-Yemeni people. We'll talk about them. There are obviously the Beta Israelites or Ethiopian Jewish people of Israel, and there's also Afro-Palestinians, right? This puts our as someone who is a descendant of the transatlantic slave trade, of the African descent enslaved people that were the ones who were actually responsible for building the United States. This is of huge concern of mine, as the Middle East, even without all of this, suffers from having Arab-backed and Arab-supported Afrophobia, right? This racialized hatred of people of African descent and lust and exploitation of people of African descent was a thing in Arab spaces before, Arab Islamic spaces before it was a thing in European Christian spaces. But this is of a huge concern of mine, and I know for other people it is as well, and it is something that we have to keep our eyes on. And this leads me to the end. The only silver lining that I can see here is that Iran is attacking a bunch of U.S. bases throughout the Middle East. Have no business being there, to be honest, those bases. So far, apparently, no U.S. soldier has been harmed. I don't know if that's changed in the last couple of hours, but that's what I heard of last time. I looked into it, but a base specifically has been bombed and I think destroyed in the United Arab Emirates. It was a U.S. base that was bombed and destroyed in the United Arab Emirates. Again, a demonic country that we, the United States, should have no trade, no money dealings with. And I think the base was called, I'm going to butcher the name, Al Dhafra Air Base in the United Arab Emirates. And hey, anything that can destroy the violent military capabilities of the United Arab Emirates, I don't care if it's even by accident, is awesome, considering that the United Arab Emirates is one of the biggest powers that is supporting the racial, not even crossing, the racial genocide, extermination, and overall colonization of Sudan by the RSF, especially in Darfur. But we'll talk about. I've been wanting to. So as some people are aware of, these are the historical illustrations that I've been doing for years. This one right here is a part of a series of historic illustrations that I created back in 2023, which are based off the original illustrations, that racial hierarchy illustrations that I made back in the 2020s. Now I'm working on new ones that I started in either 2024 or late 2024. Due to life stuff, I wasn't able to finish those, and because I'm a perfectionist and I'm always doing something, I don't like showing something until it's 101% complete. You can see these on my website that I haven't updated in a minute, but you can also see them on my old Twitter account. But just an explanation as to why I don't show these more. When I'm done with those when I'm done finishing those ones of 2024, I will show all of these. Anyway, I wanted to show this because of the chaos that Israel and the United States are causing to the Middle East, and eventually in the pursuit, unfortunately, of the greater Israeli project. And this right here is just a simple part of this Middle Eastern history. Showing this represents the racial hierarchy that is still in effect today throughout the Middle East after the Arab slave trade, the Arab Islamification of Northern Africa or Arabization of North Africa, and the Indian Ocean slave trade. This is just overall representative of Middle Eastern and Gulf states. Zang and Abid, which I was called an Abid by an Arab guy, but he ran away because I turned around and angrily looked at him. He, not knowing that I knew what that term actually means. But this represents that overall institutional Afrophobic history of the Middle East. This was an art piece that I made back in 2023. It says 2024 because it wasn't 2024 until I started adding the rings, because I couldn't get to it consistently. This is one of many heads that explains African descent ethnic communities around the world, and again Zanj and other Middle Eastern ethnic groups. The rings represent different countries and regions of the Middle East where descendants of racially enslaved Africans and African travelers from Mecca, because some of them were also free peoples where they reside currently. And those little symbols represent infants and babies, African descent people, women being forced to create and procreate, Arab, mixed Arab, and of course, African children as well. The non-credited mothers of the Middle East. This also links to what's going on currently with the RSF and the United Arab Emirates. Yemen. This one obviously represents Yemen. You can look at it. It's pretty self-explanatory, right? This is a derogatory term by most people. Afro-Yemeni people don't like being called this. And it's interesting right here because I can read it, but it references this idea that indigenous Middle Eastern people of Yemen see those of African descent in Yemen as somehow being, magical. And I find that very interesting as a Black American, considering Black Americans' history, how the Afro-Yemeni people are consistently associated with like medicine and science, but also music, like magic being in music. That's a whole historic discussion and video I could make in and of itself. With the Afro descendant people of Yemen, their blood being specifically tied to many indigenous East African ethnic groups and communities, unsurprisingly. I am not a sponsor of this program, but I highly recommend people using it. I think it got bought out by another company. But here you have one I've been working on, as recent as my all over the placeness claims. I think, again, I started this in 2024, but I added some recent ones in 2025, early 2025. Anyway, this is the United Air. This one is more recent. I might make it look. This one is recent history rather than the other ones, right? So I might add something that indicates that this one is specifically calling out the United Arab Emirates and referencing the kafala system, which is also in Saudi Arabia and other neighboring Arab and Gulf states. I'm not going to explain the kafala system because this video is way too long already, but you can look it up for yourself. And especially this is pretty self-explanatory right here. I'm not going to read it. I'll allow you to read it because I don't want this video to get demonetized. I'm pretty sure it's going to be hidden because of what Oracle and the Trump administration is doing to TikTok and other social media platforms right now. But here you go. See you guys next time. Be safe. Thanks for listening. Bye.